Oh, you've been married too long. Sorry. Sharing?
Yeah, come on. It's always like that.
It must have been a good one. You can tell us later, Dick. Right, so we're now on item. It makes it even more reason. Point of order, Councillor Quaggs, would you like to share? Item number 17.
Confidential item. Confidential item.
Confidential item. Back to seriousness, the role that council has in addressing homelessness, which is obviously one of huge concern to everybody. So welcome to our team who've been dealing with this. So who's going to go first? Rowan.
Thank you.
Right, Rowan, welcome.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So we will assume that you have the report, have read the report, but I will just provide a brief summary of the content of the report for you. So the purpose of this report is to seek approval for the scope of the policy investigation underway into Council's role in addressing homelessness. This work was requested by the Regional Strategy and Policy Committee of the last Council. So what the report does is it provides some context for the work and then a very brief summary of Council's current and important activities underway relating to homelessness. The paper sets out the proposed scope then, and the key points are that there are different forms of homelessness that people are experiencing in Auckland, and these may require different kinds of solutions. Homelessness certainly includes people who are living without shelter and rough sleeping, also people who are without shelter living in cars, but it also includes people who are living in temporary accommodation, be this emergency housing, boarding houses, caravan parks, refuges. As well as that, it includes people who are sharing accommodation on a temporary and transient basis, sometimes called couch surfing. And it also includes a fourth category of people who are living in dwellings that are considered uninhabitable, such as converted garages or sheds. So clearly homelessness in Auckland is a regional issue rather than a CBD-only issue. So if we could turn to the slide. Thank you. So what this slide recognises is that homelessness sits within the broader housing system, and that addressing homelessness will require an integrated perspective of the whole housing system, while still remaining focused on solutions which are going to be most effective in addressing people who are experiencing homelessness. So the interventions that we'll be evaluating as part of this work will be assessed for their effectiveness on their own basis, but also considered within this broader housing system context. The other point that this slide is intending to illustrate is that while homelessness incorporates rough sleepers as a really important group to consider in their own right, also important are the thousands of Aucklanders whose homelessness is less visible. So the scope we're proposing considers both current and future perspectives, and we will be looking to finding long-term solutions for people who are currently experiencing homelessness, as well as considering issues about preventing future homelessness. And the scope highlights the importance of collaborating with stakeholders in this group, in this area. So we're now seeking your approval for the scope, which we will then report back to you at your April meeting. Thank you. We're happy to take questions, Madam Chair.
So Casey, did you want to
Oh,
comment?
yeah. First of all, I just want to congratulate Mayor Goff for raising the status of our action around homelessness and championing that cause. It's great that it's being done by you as Mayor and by a committee of the whole. So absolutely, completely supportive of filling the gap. At the moment, we've got lots of people wanting to do lots of good things. And it's really important because we now have a budget that council ratepayers' money goes where, as you said, the interventions are most effective. So part of the work, and I'll explain the role of my committee, which is the reporting committee to this one. In 2 days' time, we'll be looking at the issue of rough sleeping, and we'll have the major players in the room talking about effectiveness and what they'd like to see council do, and that will feed into this work. So we can dig down, I think somebody was talking about diving down deeper, digging down deeper into the issue to inform the policy work, to inform the staff work here. So it's fantastic. So, and to all councillors, you don't have to be on my committee, just bowl up. The subject is rough sleeping. We'll have LifeWise, the City Mission, Vision West, and homeless people themselves. Rainbow Youth, one of the issues currently that has been really ignored is young people who come out and find themselves homeless because their family can't accept their new status. And that was through the Rainbow Panel and through the work of the Rainbow Youth that we filled that gap. So definitely come along to the committee on Thursday. And just to say, I'm just so happy that this is finally being done. We, I think, are leading the country, and we will continue to do so. So thank you, Mayor Goff.
Councillor Casey, would you like to move the
Yes, I would.
recommendation?
Yep.
Lovely.
Happy to second.
And Councillor Wayne Walker's happy to second. So I've got Councillor Quacks. Sorry, Councillor Quacks. Your name is actually coming up as Councillor Quad at the moment, but Councillor Quacks.
It's always on all fours.
Oh,
Councillor Quacks.
That's okay. I've been called worse. So in terms of the definition of people that are considered homeless, would that include young police officers who are, according to one district commander that I met with recently, are hotbedding? Do you understand what hotbedding is?
Through the chair, Paul, perhaps you could clarify what you understand.
Okay. Hotbedding is where one person, and a group of people share an apartment or a house, and once one person is on different shifts, one gets into the bed, gets out of bed, and the other one gets into the same bed. That's called hotbedding. Apparently it's not uncommon amongst young police officers in this city now because of the high cost of accommodation. So would those people be considered to be homeless, do you think?
Through Madam Chair, my understanding of how Statistics New Zealand and with the support of the University of Otago measure homelessness, I don't believe they would be, because my understanding is that there needs to be no certainty or very little certainty about your housing situation, and or the level of housing quality is substandard. So even though there might be challenges associated with hotbedding, my understanding is if those people have the certainty that that bed is theirs and that they can live there, then they wouldn't be considered homeless. But happy to clarify that. I'm sorry, I don't have a definitive
because
answer.
I don't think that's considered, would be considered to be a particularly good way of people to live. I'm also interested in your comments about people living in garages, because, and I think that the councillors from South Auckland will confirm this is not unusual in South Auckland to have a garage converted into a living quarter. So have we done any work on how many people in South Auckland in particular might be living in garages?
Through Madam Chair, my understanding is that the regulatory and compliance teams within Council have been trying to answer that question and working with different agencies to answer that question. But we don't have, at this point in time, a picture in terms of the quantity in Auckland.
Thank you, Councillor Quacks, and I think that's some of that is the intersect with the Southern Initiative, who are also, collecting data. Councillor Watson.
Yeah, thank you. My question follows on from some of the issues that Councillor Quacks is alluding to there, and especially in light of one of the key deliverables, which is actually to try and assess what the scale and the severity of this problem is. And I noticed that, you know, a number of the figures relate to the period between 2006 and 13. Of course, we all know it's got a lot worse since then, if people living in cars and on the streets or anything to go by. What then are the difficulties in really coming up with a meaningful, you know, number in comparison for that, given, you know, the transient nature of people that are involved and I guess their distance from conventional means of accounting for numbers? How are we going to really approach that? What sort of mechanisms are open to us to actually get a sense of that scale and severity?
Through Madam Chair, I think there are a couple of different answers to that question. Firstly, if we're looking at the volumes from a big picture perspective, then we really need to use the census data to support that, and that's why we obviously don't have anything beyond 2013. And even that, it's quite a complicated exercise to extrapolate from the census data. That's not our work, that's the University of Otago's work to extrapolate those figures. So I think that's a really important data source, but it has some obvious challenges that you allude to. And so then different either parts of our organisation or us supporting other organisations are trying to fill the gaps. So one of those gaps is in terms of people living in garages and uninhabitable dwellings, and the other part is supporting the sector to do a much better collection of data in terms of people who are living without shelter, so that part of the homelessness spectrum. So part of the funding that Council has made available to in the area of emergency housing and homelessness is going in to address that issue. So I think we will see improved data over the next short period in relation to that.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wayne Walker.
Well, I guess my question follows on from the previous two, and that really just goes to the issue around the robustness of the data and the importance of having a data set that can be revisited and adjusted. Ideally the situation gets better, but arguably it could also get worse, and we need to, I would suggest, have some monitoring. I don't have the answers for that, but can you give me any indication of how we might go about that?
Yes, so my understanding is that because we are putting resourcing into a more robust data collection, that will then enable us to support the sector to do that data collection on an annual basis, which then can be used to identify whether the approaches and interventions that collectively is being implemented, whether they are having a positive impact. So yes, I think that will improve.
And in terms of the data and the relationship with other cities, I see here that you'll be making comparison with other cities. There'll be sufficient robustness to enable that.
Through the chair, that is challenging because different cities collect in different ways and to different degrees of robustness. So the work that we've done so far leads us to think we'll be able to give indications relating to that. And some cities which collect in a really robust way, like Vancouver, for example, will probably be able to provide quite a bit of information relating to.
Okay, that's excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Newman.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Apologies, I was out of the room at the start of this particular item. A couple of questions from me. I read the report, but I also note at the meeting of Kathy Casey's committee, the Community Development and Safety Committee, later this week, we've got receiving a report from the General Manager for Arts, Community and Events on the findings regarding homelessness in Canada. So does that work relate to this, and if so, how? And
yes, absolutely. Yes. So through the chair, so that's right. So the general manager of that team has been in Canada looking at their learning from implementing homelessness strategies and interventions. So the insights gained from that will feed directly into this work.
This work, is this a quantitative piece of research, or is qualitative stuff as well as there, or because I can understand you're trying to codify the incidence of homelessness which is a statistical measure, but you're doing additional work on top of that.
Through the chair, so to clarify, no, we're not trying to focus on the volumes of homeless people living in Auckland. We're drawing on existing information to inform our work, and then our work will focus on evaluating different policies, interventions relating to council's role and council's position in addressing homelessness.
Madam Chair, I just ask the officers a final question. For example, on Monday next week, I'm meeting with Ian Hudson from the Salvation Army Parliamentary Unit in my ward, and they do a lot of really, really good and powerful policy work and analysis already in this space. If there is a rich supply of powerful analysis that's already undertaken by agencies such as Salvation Army, why are we embarking on new research? Why wouldn't we just use that research and information and then test that against the appropriateness of any sort of policy response? I mean, why are we, it seems to me there's a risk that we're starting from scratch here when the data is already out there, the research has been done, now it's about implementing the learnings of that so that we can come up with a solution.
Through to Madam Chair, no, you're absolutely right. That is our approach. We're not undertaking new research in the way that the Salvation Army would, but we are certainly drawing on their information. And so we're drawing on where there have been evaluations of different policies and what that effectiveness has been, and then looking at that evidence in the context of what an appropriate role and position for our organisation, the Auckland Council, might be.